Despite the fact that many world religions have concepts about a soul and underworld, Egypt has a very unique perspective. And their origins might lead us to very unexpected discoveries. For instance, new knowledge from the most recent advances in a little-known area of science matches many of the accounts surviving down the ages from Egyptian texts and ancient mystics. We may discover that many of their ideas have remarkable validity. Surprisingly, new developments in physics of complex plasma match extremely well ancient concepts of a man and his double known from ancient Egypt. Scientific progress is now sufficiently advanced to enable the elusive double world to be described and explained in a rigorous fashion for the first time. These scientific advances make it possible to understand some of the UAP phenomenon, for complex plasmas can pass through walls and emerge the same on the other side. The Egyptian double world seems like material, but it is a different kind of matter. The origins of the concept of the double world started back in the Old Kingdom. It appears immediately and in such a developed form that some researchers were forced to assume its long but hidden existence in ancient times, and some as a legacy from the yet unidentified civilization. In the Old Kingdom, hopes for eternal life were somehow connected with images, the system of which models this life in a way. In a nutshell, the idea of the double is that it is an exact copy of a person, and it is quite material, but from a substance less dense than a human. A double, or ka as Egyptians called it, is born together with a person, and his embodiment are statues and images. This is also that force, the presence of which they believe distinguishes the living from the inanimate. There was a practice of dressing and feeding statues of gods, suggesting that God himself was seen in the statue. However, this is a simplified understanding of ancient ideas, which in fact were much more complicated and unexpected. Egyptians well understood that the images and statues were dead, even though they associated some kind of life with images at the same time. There is an undeniable connection of images with some other existence, although it is not as obvious as it seems at first glance. Immediately, there is a problem of a false door appearing, an element that can be found at many ancient megalithic sites. In ancient Egypt, it is more or less an exact imitation of a door and is usually placed on the western wall of the chapel. The owner of the tomb believed to go through a false door, but it naturally leads nowhere. It seems like it is a relic of the technology that opens the door between this world and the other world, the world that is also known by the generic term West in Egypt. But there is a problem. In fact, a lot of false doors were made not on the west but other walls. Sometimes these doors were done on all four walls. The theory that these were potentially done to connect chapel and burial chamber in some way didn't prove as well, because some false doors were done in the burial chamber where they have nowhere to lead at all. So the obvious conclusion is that they were not served as entrances, but exits. Exits for what though? At the end of the Old Kingdom, in some tomb inscriptions, there are examples of the owner using the word door in relation to his image. The image of a person itself thus is perceived as a door, from which some kind of his manifestation comes out. Other Old Kingdom texts claim that the artisans, by creating images, thereby create the tomb owner's afterlife, and as it seems, this double world is closely connected to the world of images. The essence of the false door then becomes clear. Being ultimately an image, it has the property of generating some kind of manifestation of the depicted real door. Naturally, only the manifestation of the owner generated by the images during the service of the priest can come out through such a door. Hence, these were to help the visitor to feed deceased person's double by sending this elusive mental energy directly to the owner of the tomb. Even though the principle of a mechanism of action of these processes and how the double comes out of them remains unclear. The light is another vital and important characteristic of a double, but we'll return to this aspect later on. According to Egyptians, a double is not created by a person, but arises at the moment of his birth, and therefore coexists with him throughout his life. The double turns out to be a permanent, natural companion of a person. The significance of the double for the future life turned him into an object of constant attention and unceasing care. Finally, the word neter, God, has been used since pre-dynastic times and belongs to the same root as the word double.
While every man has at least one ka, there are some ancient texts saying that the gods had a lot more ka. For instance, in ancient times, 14 ka of the god Ra were known.
Speaking of the gods, their doubles were needed to be fed as well. And in this regard, it turned out they were highly dependent on their human breadwinners. At the same time, sacrificial products are not needed by themselves, but only to generate food doubles for the owner of the tomb. It seems that every person, every living being, every biological object has its own double. In this case, along with the world in which people live, there is a world that is its exact and complete copy. French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero was a strong proponent of this theory. This other world is not only the origin of life, but is also the domain of the non-terrestrial forces we sometimes call the gods. Egyptologists call this the double world, the domain of the Ka, or the man's double. Nowadays, it has become quite obvious that the worldview of the Egyptians is highly peculiar and does not fit into any existing frameworks. An interesting parallel to their ideas can be found in the views of the spiritualists, though. According to the English spiritualist Oliver Lodge, the spirit of his son Raymond explained the essence of his world in this way: everything that is necessary for a person, everything that a person in some sense makes his own, has an ethereal duplicate. You can create an etheric body of anything, a piano, a clock, a table, by wishing and striving to have it with you. You endow it with an ethereal life. You create a model, a mental model that gives it an ethereal form. Your thought about the subject creates a kind of form into which the ether is cast. The difference here is only in terms. It is enough to replace the etheric body with a double, and we will get a very accurate representation of the Egyptian double world. Thus, the old Egyptian double world is unique to everything we know in other cultures. Firstly, this is not some kind of underworld, but a newly created fragment of reality every time. Secondly, it is not a common dwelling for many, but a closed territory for strangers, intended only for its owner and his relatives and servants. And the last but not least, this is not the afterlife, because it is created and begins to exist during the life of a person, and his double lives in it.
Sometimes there is a naive understanding that this is the so-called creation of the parallel world. So there is a world of the living beings in which we hunt, cultivate the land. And there is the parallel world for the double in which the same things happen. But in reality, there is no parallel world at all. These two worlds, the earthly and the divine, turn out to be absolutely closed into one.
This world can be defined as coexisting with the real world, and it is this contact of the worlds through the image that was reflected by the word door. Unlike European literary counterparts, Egyptian double was not an extraordinary phenomenon, but a universal one. It's incredible, but they started with the fact that the double exists as one of the natural properties of the world, as a manifestation of its physics as soon as in the Old Kingdom already. Could it be then that such outstanding concepts are based on real knowledge, even though they are so ancient? And that makes one wonder, what could be used from the already known physics to describe this less dense matter that either coexists or is a part of our world that can match those ideas? Could the best candidate be the universe of plasma?